The idea is you take a look at an object from every possible perspective and write about it. She wrote about Stoller from a cultural and a historical and a personal essay point of view. And I was in conversation with her then, and now she's back home with her kids, and I'm here with you. So I'll just jump right in. Something Better, as Rachel said, is my debut novel, and I will read the first few pages. Before, February 2009. The house sits inside a snow globe. The man and the woman catch glimpses through the swirling flakes of the party glittering within, a scene of warmth and light and laughter, confirmation they'd been right to risk the storm. They pick their way along the ice-covered walk toward the front door. She clutches his arm until he can guide her safely into the welcoming embrace of their hosts. The door closes behind them, and the storm ceases to exist. This is a real party, not some faculty chips and beer affair. There are bartenders and servers, past canapes, drinks in crystal glasses. Somewhere a piano plays. The guests are well dressed, preparing to make a night of it because it's beastly out there, and in here is all they need. He gravitates toward a lively group of fellow professors by the fire. She wanders until she reaches the library, where a handful of guests are quietly chatting from the comfort of large leather chairs. They found their people. Whenever he replenishes his drink or revisits the buffet, he peeks into the room where she sits, lifting his glass or raising his eyebrow. She smiles, nods yes or no. He sees to her, then moves on to charm another group. They roar at his stories, beg him for more. By night's end, he will have collected a dozen new acquaintances, and she will have made a new friend. A perfect evening. When it starts to get late, she finds him, catches his eye, and touches the watch on her wrist. She stands by the door, waits for him to shake hands with every lingering guest. By midnight, they're the last ones in the foyer. It's all, thank you, goodbye, maybe you should stay, it's so awful out there. No, we'll be okay. Stepping into a furious wind, she asks if she should drive, but he assures her he's fine. He fires up the heater, scrapes the windows, then takes the driver's seat, full of news to share about his version of the night. Of course, I'll be careful, but listen to this. At first, he seems up to the task. Not too fast, she reminds him. For the most part, he keeps his eyes on the road, and they skid just a little now and then. But on this winter night, the wind is fierce, the road is winding, and the driver is distracted. He's still talking and gesturing when they begin to slide sideways downhill. Only when the car starts to spin does silence descend, and the laws of physics have their way. The car whirls in wider and wilder accelerating spirals until it leaves the road, careens through the woods, and smashes headfirst into a tree. Snow falls all night, obscuring their tracks and the trail of broken limbs. It isn't until the next afternoon that a beam of sunlight glinting off a window catches the eye of the snowplow driver passing by. The location of the car makes retrieval difficult. The passage of many hours renders rescue impossible. The plow driver keeps vigil until the police arrive, then resumes his route and makes his way home to his wife. He walks in the door and describes what he's seen. Who? How? She asks, but what if you hadn't happened by? He asks, but what if I'd been there sooner? And there we jump right into the middle of the story. When I first submitted the draft of the novel to an editor, I set it up a little bit more, told you a little bit more about who the people were and why they were going out for the evening. And she said, I think you ought to just jump right into the accident. And so I did, just jump right into the accident. And leave everybody wondering who the heck these people are and why this happened. So you can probably perceive that this is going to be, these people are not at one book event, people were not sure if the couple survived or not, but it's pretty clear, right, that they did not. They're gone. They leave behind a 19-year-old daughter who's an only child who was away for her first year of college. And the snowplow driver and his wife were close friends of the couple who died. So the couple who, not the ones who died, the couple who were friends of the deceased people, decide to take Annabeth, the orphan child, under their wing and try to help her acclimate to life without her parents in a town where she's never lived, because they moved to this town when she went away to school. So she knows literally no one. She is truly on her own. And things begin well. They have the best of intentions and everyone's working together. But I won't get into all the details of the plot because I can't tell all the secrets. But the wife is called away. She's a lawyer. She's called away to work for an important client. And it turns into a longer assignment and a more distant assignment. And the longer she's away, the more he is alone without her and this younger woman. They end up working together and things take a turn that maybe is not so surprising, but also on the other hand pretty darn shocking. And so they have to kind of find their way after this event to a place where they all understand what part they played in the events and where they go from here. So that's the basic plot of the book without all the juicy parts revealed. And the first few pages actually lift up what some of the motifs and themes of the book are going to be: grieving, loneliness, mistakes, forgiveness, and go from there. So there's a lot of foreshadowing in this first part, I will say. So that's how the book begins. I will tell you, people have asked me, and I will tell you why I wrote this book. At the time I first got the notion to write the book, I was observing two similar situations that had very different outcomes. One was a situation where there was infidelity in a marriage, and it was pretty widely known among the community that this is what had happened. And somehow, this couple, who had been through this very public humiliation, came through the crisis, stayed together, and appeared for all the world, they're still together, appeared for all the world as if they had forgiven each other and moved on. At the same time, this was around 2008-9, in my own family, there were two people who had been estranged in the family. One of them was terminally ill, and we all thought, surely now, after all these years of not speaking and not getting along, when somebody is about to die, they will sort this out and forgive each other. And they didn't. The person who died with no forgiveness on either side. And it was hard to watch, hard to be a part of the family when this was happening. And I kept thinking, why? Why did this work out and this did not? And so I just really became focused on forgiveness. I was in a study involving forgiveness. I read a book by Louis Smedes, I think his name is pronounced, about how to forgive. And I became a little obsessed with the notion of forgiveness. So I decided what I wanted to do was look at it from the point of view of three different people who come at life from a different perspective and do it through fiction, because I like fiction, and I think you can explore things in fiction perhaps more obliquely than you can in nonfiction if it's a personal relationship type of situation. So that's why I wanted it to be a novel. So I have three characters. The first one is Ruth. She's the wife of the snowplow driver, and she's a believer, so she comes at it from her faith perspective. David is not. He comes at it from a perspective of trying to be a good person, having his own moral compass and his own standards, but he's doing it his way. And Annabeth is the younger girl, the 19-year-old girl, and she's still sorting out where she is, who she is. So she's trying to figure out how to be without her parents, is her primary concern. And so I wanted to braid those three stories together and see how the approach to forgiveness and the possibility of forgiveness differed among those three people. So that's why I chose them. And I had a lot of fun writing about all three of them. Within a few pages of inventing them, they decided they were going to become real, that they were going to tell me what they wanted to do and where they were going to go, which was, I've heard other fiction writers say that, and I always thought, what a load. That can't possibly. You're calling the shots. How can you not tell these people what to do? But it's crazy. When they really seem real to you, they actually do point in a certain direction. For example, the major break in the book, I kept writing around it for a long time. I didn't want that to be the thing that happened, but it became very clear that it had to be the thing that happened. And so I had to find a way to write about it. So I did. And when I first submitted the book to try to get it published, I heard contradictory things depending on where I was submitting it. One group of potential publishers said, you can't write that. You can't write that in a book. You can't have that happen. We just absolutely cannot have that happen, so go away. And another group of publishers said, well, we can't. This book isn't juicy enough. The sex isn't graphic enough. And we don't want any of that. Nobody in that book needs to be a believer. You can't have that in a book. So I was kind of stuck in the middle, in no man's land. I did finally meet an editor who said to me, well, you need to decide, who are you writing for and what are you writing? Do you want to write a bestseller, or do you want to write a book that you can someday point to on the shelf and say to your grandchildren, that's Nani's book. I wrote that book. I mean, not like that. I mean, obviously, that's what I wanted to do. So that's what I did. And it was an interesting process towards publication. As I said, I got a lot of rejections, which is, a standard operating procedure. You get a lot of rejections and you grow a thicker skin and you just keep doing it. But then I found a publisher. It was so exciting. I went to a Pitch and Publish conference, and a small publishing company fell in love with my book, and I was on the road to publication until about 6 months before the book was supposed to come out. And all these things that were supposed to be happening, I was supposed to be looking at a cover, and I never got a cover. Nobody answered my emails about a cover. I was supposed to be looking at galleys. We've been through editing, but I hadn't seen the galleys, and I would email, when are the galleys coming? Never got a response. Well, unbeknownst to me, the woman who owned the business, it was a very small publishing company, was really, really sick and did not want to tell anyone she was really, really sick because she was afraid if people found out she would lose her business. And so she just kept trying to keep people hanging on by their fingernails. I mean, she was really sick, so I'm not faulting her. She did what she thought was best, but in the meantime, a lot of people got left out to dry. So finally, she did tell everyone, we're going away. I can't do this anymore. So I had to get a lawyer and get my rights back and start all over again, which was not the A scenario, as you might imagine. But in the meantime, I had submitted the book for blurbing, the nice things they say about you on the cover. I had submitted that to an agent, not intending to ask her to be my agent, but because it was the kind of book I thought she might understand and want to write a blurb about, which she did. And then when she found out that the publishing deal fell apart, she reached out to me and said, I'll be your agent, I can help you. And that was what a godsend that was. So she started submitting the book around to different places. It took a while. The book was rejected for similar reasons for the other rejected for a while. But these were such nice rejections, and I was compared to authors I really liked. I kept saying to my agent, can we put these rejections on? I'm really, really happy with them. No, we can't. But I eventually did find a new publisher, and it's been great working with them. They have been in the book business for a long time, working on the PR and publicity aspect of books, but they wanted to reach out into traditional publishing. And because they already knew me, I had hired them when I had the first publisher. They came to me and said, you want to be our guinea pig? You want to try this? I'm like, well, sure, this story's already crazy enough. Let's try that. And they've been just terrific to work with, just absolutely terrific. And they've just been a dream. I had input on the cover, and I had a wonderful editor I really respected. It's been a terrific process. And a lot of great events like this one, which is really fun. So that's how the book came to be born in this world. I was going to read another section to you. I know this book sounds, it's about heavy stuff, people dying, people doing bad things in the middle of the book, people grieving, people trying to find their way to forgiveness. It is not all doom and gloom. There are some, I've been told, I can't say, oh, I wrote some funny parts, but I've been told that it has humorous parts so that it relieves the relentless story pushing its way forward. And also, well, I will tell what happened today, actually. I wrote the book for thinkers. So I have to be careful how I say that because it sounds like I'm kind of a snob, and I really don't think I am, although some people in this room might differ about that. I wrote the book for people who want to be engaged in the story and be involved in the interpretation of the story. I didn't want to lay everything out on a silver platter. I didn't want to hammer people over the head with the themes. I wanted people to decide for themselves as they read the book, oh, what actually was he saying here when he said this sentence? What's the undercurrent here? And when they move in this direction, why did they move in this direction? To not make it hard to figure out what's happening, but involve readers in the story. Those are the kind of books I like to read, and that's what I wanted this book to be. And most people who've read the book have been very kind and said they appreciated that. Although I have had a few people reach out to me and say, I hated the ending of the book. First of all, they made the wrong decision, and secondly, you didn't make it clear enough that they made the wrong decision. Okay, but today, out of the clear blue sky, I got a call from a friend who read the book and said, it was like magic falling out of the air. She said, I make New Year's calls every year to 3 or 4 people I've been thinking about, and I want to tell them something about themselves that they may not be aware of. And I wanted to call you and tell you how much I liked your book, and that the ending is absolutely perfect. Oh. Isn't that amazing? So I'm sure she's brilliant. Her judgment is absolutely excellent. I took it as gospel truth. So there's a character in the book. These characters are all completely invented characters. I'm in every character because the author is in every character. And I practice law. There's a lawyer in here. I have a garden. There's a landscape designer in here. My parents moved to a town when I was a freshman. I didn't know anybody in the town. So there are bits and pieces of my story incorporated in the characters. It is not my story. None of this really happened to me, except there's a character in the book named Aunt Janet who was really a piece of work. Okay? And I had an aunt, other name, not Janet. It was very much like this. I had to tone her down a little bit because she was more than Aunt Janet. So Aunt Janet is coming to visit Annabeth, the young girl, to whip her into shape and get her back on the right path, which is absolutely terrifying Annabeth out of her wit. She does not want Aunt Janet to come, and there's nothing she can do about it. So she decides that the night Aunt Janet arrives, she's going to have a little party with David and Ruth, the snowplow driver, the lawyer couple, and a young guy she met on a run with Theo. And she's tried to warn them, and it's ready for Aunt Janet. Aunt Janet is on her way. So, Theo arrived toting a large bag of charcoal. After introductions and getting to know you chat, he said to Annabeth, I probably should go check out the grill. She agreed, and together they went out the back door. So glad you're here, she said when they were alone on the porch. Me too. I'm glad I met your friends. They aren't so much my friends. They're more like my parents' friends. And now, whoa, one of them is my boss. But David and Ruth have been looking out for me. I'm glad you're here, though. At that moment, a car appeared at the end of the driveway. She's here, Annabeth said, her eyes wide, feeling dizzy. Theo put his hand on her elbow. Come on, let's face the dragon together. They walked around the side of the house to greet Aunt Janet, who was hauling a suitcase from the trunk of her rental car. Here, said Theo. Let me help you with that. Janet ignored him and hoisted the bag out of the trunk and plopped it on the driveway. Then she removed a large zipper tote and a well-taped cardboard box and set them on the ground next to her bag. Tomatoes, she said without turning around. Jack told me there wasn't a decent tomato to be had in the entire state of Connecticut, and I'll be damned if I'm eating mush when I have a garden full of better boys that would melt in your mouth. Hi, Aunt Janet, Annabeth said. How was your trip? The usual hell that happens when you get inmates running the asylum. Boarding from your front, no food, seats designed by a CIA interrogation squad. I told the flight attendant to just keep the darn Coke if she was too cheap to leave the can. Oh, my. Well, Aunt Janet, this is my friend, Theo Comstock. Here, take that suitcase and I'll get the tomatoes. Don't want you dropping them after I held them on my lap the whole way here. Except for takeoff and landing, of course, when the flight attendant made me stuff them under the seat, as if that made any difference at all. Rules for no reason, that's just what that's all about. Janet put the tote over her shoulder, picked up the box, and started toward the house. Now Theo looked at Annabeth with his eyes wide open. She shook her head and giggled. They trailed behind Janet until she arrived at the back door and shouted, "Any chance somebody could open this door?" Annabeth ran to grab the handle, but David was already pushing it open from the other side. Janet stepped into the kitchen saying, "Thank you. It's nice to know there are still gentlemen in this world." Annabeth quickly glanced back at Theo, who returned the look of bemused puzzlement as he stepped through the kitchen, pulling Janet's suitcase. Janet placed the box of tomatoes next to the kitchen sink, sighed grandly, and surveyed the room. "Are we having a party?" she asked. "Just a few friends for dinner," Annabeth said. She made introductions and maneuvered to shake hands with Aunt Janet, who pointed at Theo, still holding the suitcase. "Just put that anywhere," she said. "I don't want to deal with it now." David spoke to Janet. "Can I get you a glass of wine?" "No, thank you. I'll have a scotch on ice." So that's how she comes into the room, rather forcefully. Let's see. Oh, sometimes, in fact, Jennifer asked me earlier how long it took me to write the book. Sometimes people want to know, and it's difficult to admit that it took me over 15 years to write the book. I had the idea, as I said, when I was watching this forgiveness situation, and I started writing the book, and then my inner insecure monster, is that what I would call her, kept coming out and saying, "You don't know what you're doing. You have no business writing a book. Stop it right now." And so I would stop it right now. I took a few classes along the way about writing, but I never really took a class on how to put a novel together, and I would talk myself out of finishing the book. Then I'd get excited about it again. I couldn't stop thinking about them, and I'd go back and try to write it, and I'd put it aside again, back and forth for a long, long time. And finally I decided, okay, so whatever else happens, just finish it. Even if people have finished novels in their drawer of their desk all the time, just get to that point. Just write a draft of the book. So I did write a draft of the book, and then I told my daughter, who's a writer, and a good friend of mine who's a writer, I finally admitted, I mean, I didn't even tell people I was writing this thing, but I finally said to them, "Oh, I kind of wrote this book." And they both said, "I want to read it." It was terrifying to turn the manuscript over to people to read. Thank goodness they were good friends and a daughter. And especially with my daughter, I knew she was not going to let me off the hook. She was not going to lie to me about whether this should be burned in a major bonfire or whether it was worth pursuing. But she was also going to be kind. She was not going to say what she had to say in a mean way. So I gave her and my friend the manuscript, and they were both encouraging. They both said, "No, it's good. You need to finish it." And my daughter said, "You need to actually try to get it out there in the world." And once I had even that much encouragement, I decided to be brave. And it is, I am not somebody who would open my chest and reveal my inner thoughts about much of anything, which you end up doing in a novel, whether you mean to or not. But that little bit of encouragement allowed me to take that chance. And although there were ups and downs, and it's been kind of a crazy ride, I'm glad I did it, because what I wanted to look at and think about in terms of forgiveness is in these pages, and it's also been a learning experience for me. It's given me a chance to really think about forgiveness and how essential it is for getting through a day of our lives. I mean, it can be some little thing like somebody cutting you off in traffic, or forgetting to respond to your email, or something like that. It's little, but you have to forgive that, all the way to something really big, where somebody betrays you, somebody betrays a trust, or somebody breaks your heart. You have to find a way to deal with that, because it kills you not to. You don't have to welcome the person who's hurt you back into your open arms. You don't have to decide to spend the rest of your life with this person. But if you allow the poison of not forgiving to live inside you, it will kill you. And that's what I came to see very clearly. And, I forgive imperfectly like every other person on planet Earth. But having written this, I'm freshly aware every morning how important it is to forgive the people who hurt you. So that's a lot of yammering from me. I'm happy to answer questions or talk more about publishing or the book.
What does the title mean?
Oh, the title. Well, it comes up many times in the book. Along the way, that all the characters have to decide between one route or another route, which one is the better route. And at the very end, Ruth believes she has chosen the something better. They all believe they have chosen the something better, but not everyone might agree that they have actually done that. So, yeah, it's consistent. It's part of it's one of the motifs of the book.
When you were writing the book, what's the best time of the day to write a book?
First thing in the morning for me. I'm freshest then, and there have actually been studies shown that first thing in the morning you're less likely to edit yourself. You can tap into your inner creative juices, and if you can keep yourself from trying to correct what you're thinking, just put it all down on paper and go with that. It's better. I'll say, my daughter would say, just write anything. Just write for half an hour. Whatever comes out, you can salvage something from it. Just let it flow. And then the next day you can go back and fix it. But I discovered about myself that doesn't work for me. If I'm putting down anything that's coming into my head on a piece of paper and go back and look at it the next day, I'm horrified. Oh, that's a mess. I don't want to try to sort that out. And I throw it away and start all over again. So I try to tap into the early morning. I'm not yet criticizing myself, but understand that I can't leave a complete mess on a piece of paper. I have to tidy it up somewhere, or it's not really useful to me. And if I haven't written by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's not happening. I'm in a whole different place by then, thinking about to-do lists and practical things. The creative part is really gone.
Go ahead. Okay, so you said this took you about 15 years. Do you have other stories? Do you have other projects that you're working on right now?
I do, actually. I've started my second book, which is very different from this one. It's a historical novel that takes place in 18th century colonial Virginia in a time of a yellow fever epidemic, and it involves some pioneers, I guess you would call them, and the Native Americans that they live with. I've been doing a lot of research around that and learning a lot, and now that I've waded in, I'm a little bit terrified. I don't want to get all that wrong, so I'm really trying to be careful about how I tell the story, but it's fascinating. I was interested in this because I also do genealogical research, and I discovered that in the year, I think it was 1747, 3 of my husband's ancestors, well, they all came to his direct ancestors, but 3 of my husband's relatives all died within a period of 6 weeks in the fall of that year, and they lived on contiguous farms. And the women did not die, the children did not die, and you can't find the records anymore for that kind of thing, but I kept thinking, why? What could possibly be the reason that these people all died at the same time and they were in the prime of life? And I found out that the people who lived there then were very susceptible to yellow fever because they were mostly Europeans who were new to this continent, had no resistance whatsoever. But the natives knew how to avoid getting sick. So I don't know if that's why they died, but in this book, that's why they died. And so we're gonna explore that. I'm gonna have some interaction between the Native Americans and a woman who's willing to listen to them and try to figure out how to manage the epidemic that's besetting them.
Okay, follow-up question. Are you keeping the faith piece, in that book, or is that separate?
One of the characters does have a faith. She's actually, it's even a little weirder than I first said, she's actually a clairvoyant, but she doesn't know if her clairvoyance is a good thing or an evil thing. So while she's getting this information from who knows, she's also fighting it because she's afraid it might not be something she actually should have. So that's a layer, and she suddenly has to take care of her sister's children because they're left orphans. So there's gonna be a lot of stuff going on in this book, and that's gonna be a part of it. And the Native American, she also connects with a deaf, mute, and Native American boy because there's not enough happening in this book, so I added that. And he has his beliefs, but it's hard for him to communicate them because he's deaf and mute. But that's also gonna be threaded through the book somehow. I hope. That's the notion anyway. Tony?
Is there any particular novelists that influenced you particularly that you
I have my favorites for sure.
yeah.
Contemporary writers, I think Claire Keegan and Maggie O'Farrell may be two of the best writers living today. I love their work. I also like Elizabeth Strout. I also, oh help me, Rachel, you will know, This Is Happiness. Oh shoot, what is his name? Give me a minute. Niall Williams, thank you. Love his writing, love his writing. Let's see, who else am I crazy about? There's some contemporary writers right now who I'm not really resonating with, although they're extremely popular. I won't name them, but there's some of them who are so, so plotless, if that makes sense. I like a book with plot and character. I think the character needs to dominate, but I do think something needs to happen. And so there are a lot of writers writing right now where it seems to me nothing happens. I don't care for that. I mean, kudos to them, they're being published and they should keep writing, but I probably won't be reading them. I also read a lot of classics, so, you know, I think Tolstoy is amazing. I think, well, pretty much me. I love Elizabeth Wharton. I mean, Edith Wharton. I love, you know, when someone asks me, when did you go blank? Oh, of course, Jane Austen and the Bronte girls. I mean, I grew up on them. Love them.
So for something better, obviously it's about forgiveness. Is there anything that you look back now that you've, over the last 15 years writing the book, is there anything you look back from your life that you would change how that forgiveness story looked versus how it actually played out?
How it played out in the book, you mean?
No, in your life.
In my life?
Yeah, do you look at anything and say, oh, I wish I could be handled that differently or done that differently?
Oh, only 27,000 examples I can come up with. Yes, of course. I think I wish I had always been, I hope I will be, and I wish I had been quicker to forgive, although I will say that with a caveat. One of the things I wanted to show in the book is that forgiveness is not like that. You can decide to forgive someone, but that doesn't mean that moment you have forgiven them. It's a process. You kind of have to talk yourself into it, you have to remind yourself, you have to give it some space to take root. And I think it might have been C.S. Lewis who said something like, I've completed the job of forgiveness on a Thursday, and I find by next Tuesday I have to do it all over again. It is like that. It's just it's a constant repair of existing forgiveness, and it's a constant exposure to new opportunities to forgive. So yeah, I'm always working on that. And I hope I didn't give the impression that I got this forgiveness stuff figured out. I don't. That's why I had to write the book, because I still don't really understand it. I don't understand why was it possible here and not possible here? I still can't answer that question. I don't know. I don't know these people well enough to know how they were able to manage it. I know these people well enough to know why they didn't, but that's not the question I wanted to answer. I wanted to answer this question: how is it possible? And I haven't fully answered that. I've partially answered it in the book and given some opportunity to think, oh, it might be this, but it's a challenge. I think it's one of the biggest, okay, I'm gonna stop talking in a minute, but I think it's one of the biggest challenges about being a human being, is learning how to forgive. Because the opportunities are endless, and it's all too easy to hold. Holding a grudge is so easy. Being angry is so easy, but it's so destructive, I think. Maggie?
I'm just gonna not ask a question, but a personal note. Jess and I have somebody in our life who is very much like Aunt Janet. Very
I'm
much.
sorry.
Who's our favorite character though?
And also comic relief, but that person who is my sister passed away suddenly. And I was mad, really mad. And it took me reading this book to dive into her death and forgive her.
I think the example you just gave is probably the hardest forgiveness, when the person goes and dies on you before you've worked that out. I mean, I don't know how over time, but the fact that you have found a way to forgive her even though she died and left her end undone is enormous.
So she'd be the one plowing in with all of the bins, and let's clear out the house and.
I texted my mom when the tomato moment, because I was like, yeah, that was I have a pineapple story.
I'm definitely gonna hear that pineapple story. Oh, I have so many Janet stories. I will tell you one about the real, not Janet story. My husband and I have been married 43 years, right? Yes, 43, well, in 2 weeks it will be 43 years. But I had a brief, not well done marriage before that, very short marriage. And when that marriage fell apart, I was still in school, in college, in law school, I did not have any income, and I was kind of, not knowing what I was going to do. And my parents said, Aunt Janet offered to take you in, and I'm like, maybe this marriage isn't so bad. But she had a big heart, and I knew I had a safe place to go. And it was funny, after living with her, I only lived with her a month maybe, but after living with her, I realized she's actually a really good person. She just doesn't want anybody to know that. She just doesn't want anybody to see through that. And I learned more about her life and came to understand why she's like she is. In fact, sometimes people ask me, are you going to write a sequel? I think I might need to write about Janet. I might need to write about Janet. Is anybody here, I always have to ask this question, is anybody here a writer or a wannabe writer? You can say, you're in safe company.
I think it's inspiring to see somebody publish their first book after you've lived a long life of being a lawyer, being a mother, and all these other things. So it makes you think, never say never.
Absolutely never say never, and that's what I would say to anybody who thinks that maybe they want to write someday. First of all, there's no set timeline. You don't have to be 27 or 18 or 40, whatever. Who cares? If you want to write, You should definitely write. And there's no one path, especially now. Publishing is, well, Rachel, you can agree with this probably. Publishing is like a deck of cards being thrown in the air. I mean, it's either the big five are about to be the big four, and someday they may be the big one, and they're owned by corporations who are all about profit. So that road is very different from the road people took in the 1940s and 1950s. There's so much self-publishing, there's so much concierge publishing, there's so much hybrid publishing. There are so many ways to get a book published. I mean this sincerely. Don't let the fear that it might not ever see the light of day hold you back. Because if you want, if you write a book, you can decide, like Colleen Hoover for her first book, I'm gonna write this and publish it myself. And look where she is now. I mean, anything is possible. Publishing is absolutely crazy. But the need to get words on paper from what you observe and experience in the world it's, if you have to, you have to. Even if it's just in a journal. But I would say that if you have the call to write, don't stop with a journal. Why not? You can be a grandma and do it. Well, I thank everybody so much for coming tonight. I'm happy to answer more questions. I'm going to be signing some books. It just means a lot. It's a really cold night out there. I mean, maybe not to you guys, but it's pretty darn cold.
Always, but thank you for appreciating it. But yeah, no, this is
This is springtime for you.
This is-
It seems pretty cold to me, and,
It's no snow. It's
Oh.
awesome, it's beautiful out there.
yeah, it is beautiful.
No
out there.
ice.
It is beautiful out there. So it means a lot that you came out, and it's fun to get to talk to people about the book and the process, and I hope this is the best year ever for every single one of you. And